I'm here with Annie Hussain, and she runs Is It Grammable? And she came into Don't Bury the Lead, and she deemed us grammable, which I was very flattered. I had never really interacted with a lot of the Instagrams that go around to different pop-ups because this is my first time being a pop-up, and we got to talking, and I found her incredibly interesting and wanted to introduce her to everyone I know.
Hi, everyone. So, as Alex introduced me, I'm Annie from Is It Grammable? And I go around the city really letting people know what's grammable, what's affordable, because I already know living in New York City is so expensive, and I really want to make it an experience for everyone, be inclusive as possible, just so that, everyone can have a good time and really enjoy New York.
My two rules for wanting to make stuff is one, I like free stuff, and two, I like stuff I can touch. So that was both of my rules that I wanted to make for doing Don't Bury the Lead. Like, I don't want anything you can't touch. I don't want anything that costs too much money because it is expensive. It's between the subway and the food, no matter what borough you live in, no matter where you are, it seems that the city will bleed you of all your cash.
Oh, definitely. It will run you dry as much as it possibly can. And even like this exhibit, this pop-up, I loved it because it was interactive, but it also gave a lot of history about like journalism, which is something you don't really find in a lot of pop-ups nowadays. Is you don't really find history behind it. Everything's about a quick buck or two, and it's less about making people immersed in their art.
What other places have really just kind of like hit you around the city that you like a lot?
I mean, I really like cute like bubble tea places. So for me, it's like it's a cheapie, and you get a really cute picture. But like between pop-ups that I really like, there was one. I mean, there are so many, like I really can't even keep track. But like one I just went to was like the public unveiling of Heart Squared, and it's in Times Square. And any New Yorker will tell you we hate Times Square. We hate going there because it's crowded. It's like, not to say that it's the worst kind of people, but everyone is super pushy.
Yeah, my friend works on Harry Potter. She's a costumer, so she helps them change really quick. And every day she goes to work, she's like, "Why do we do this?" But yeah, anyway, go on.
I mean, I could relate to her. I used to work at Madame Tussauds, which was
really?
the worst because you're staring at a green screen the entire day. And I think I'm a talkative person. I like to talk, but a lot of people are so caught up in like taking pictures with their selfie stick that they kind of avoid talking to anyone else.
Tell me what that was like working for Madame Tussauds. Tussauds, is that how you pronounce
Tussauds.
it? Tussauds.
I don't really. I mean, I enjoy the people I worked with, but like the whole experience as a whole, I wouldn't recommend. My better job was actually working on 44th, which was where it's called Discovery Times Square. It's no longer there. But there was a Harry Potter exhibit there.
Oh, that's cool. What was it? Like a museum?
Yep, it was a museum. So like we had different exhibits. My favorite one was a Star Wars one, and they also had a Hunger Games one. That one I love because people were so into.
Did you get a weapon and like could you harm others?
The one that I was in was actually the video experience. So we had people pretend to be in the chariot scene in the Hunger Games. So we really had to get people riled up like, hey, pretend you're in a chariot waving to everyone.
Right. Wow. I mean, so you've kind of been involved in this sort of new era of smaller museum, I want to say almost like novelty art.
Oh, yeah.
Like things in New York for a while, and you're from here. You're born and raised in Queens.
In Queens, Astoria. So, I mean, when you come to think about Queens, it's really this like multicultural hot pot where you'll meet every type of person, people of different walks of life, really people who have lived there their entire lives and seen how much it's changed. Like me being from Astoria, I've really seen it go from a homely neighborhood to like a not gentrified to the point that Williamsburg is, but it will be at some point.
Right. But could it ever be as gentrified since there isn't as much like raw space to deal with? There's a lot of homes, right? And like,
right.
And I guess the bad thing about a lot of the Williamsburg stuff was it was just development. And in Queens, like families are invested in the neighborhood and stuff.
I
or
mean,
you think,
that's the sad thing is like there's this really cool art project space which is called the Welling Court Mural Project, and they have various graffiti artists come in and paint the walls. And I've been going like 2 years in a row, and I've seen it. Like 2 years ago, there were plenty of wall spaces, and now everything's being renovated out by like condos. And I went on an art tour just to see, because it was free, and I was like, hey, let me find out more about the artists. They were saying that a lot of the developments that are happening there for condos are people from like other countries who just buy these spaces that are empty the entire time.
oh.
And the sad thing is, like, normally I wouldn't go into that area because it is kind of unsafe at night.
So what area exactly are we talking
So
about?
we're talking about like towards like the Ravenswood projects.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I do think at some point or another they're going to start kicking out people who live in those housing projects.
Rather than building better affordable housing that
I mean-
isn't so like exclusionary.
I mean, I think we could see that when Mike Bloomberg came into office, he tried to make everything for the super wealthy. And how I feel is New York is becoming so unaffordable that they're kind of pushing out the New York culture, because the New York culture is inclusivity and just everyone coming from a different background. When New York loses its diversity, is New York really New York anymore?
Also, if there's no jobs for new immigrants, then there's no way to have this beautiful thing that New York was always like. I mean, there's always problems. Like New York was always exclusionary, and there were always these sects of people that like wanted to keep people out. But like in general, you could get a job that were these stepping stone jobs as like a new person to the country that then eventually would let you assimilate into the middle class. And a lot of those jobs are gone. And like
It's like, at least this is my perception, is like growing up, what I thought was rich was living in Manhattan, but then I have friends who live in Harlem who have really seen it change, and they're like, at this point, if I wasn't on rent control, I wouldn't be able to afford it.
I'm on rent control.
Yeah.
And I just like that turn of phrase.
I mean, I was told, and I didn't know this until someone pointed it out to me, is like instead of waiting in line, I wait online.
Oh, yeah.
So like it's like a New York terminology is like instead of waiting in line, you're waiting online.
Right. Oh, that's true. So tell me more about how you grew up and where you grew up. You were talking about Astoria and how you can see it kind of gentrifying.
Right. So I grew up on Steinway, which I'm sure anyone who knows Astoria knows what Steinway is. And growing up, it used to be a predominantly like Greek neighborhood. And now it's becoming a little more mixed. Now there's more Arabs and more different ethnicities. But I feel like a lot of it is either becoming super dangerous or like a lot more gentrified to the point that we can't even live there anymore. Like I still love it, but I feel like it's kind of lost its like essence in a way to gentrification.
What else do you see for the future?
I mean,
For yourself even.
growing up in Queens, I have a love-hate relationship. I think any New Yorker can say they have a love-hate relationship. Like, I love Queens. I love that, like, I can go out at any time and, like, really just, like, grab myself any food that I want. And I love that, like, it's inclusive to every type. But then, on the other hand, I feel like because of the way things are going, at least economically, people are trying so hard to make their ends meet, and they may go about it the wrong way. For instance, growing up, I've never had this problem where we would be walking outside and we would have to worry about like holding our phones in our pockets. So like 2 years ago, my brother was outside and it was still relatively early, 9 p.m. I think that's relatively early, still a populated area. Someone on a bike just grabbed his phone and left like that. I've never experienced that before. I mean, it could be a one-off instance, but now every other day, and I guess it's because of the Citizens app that's always updating you on like
of
the
course.
latest crime ever, that there's like a slashing going on or there's like this going on. So maybe it's because of I'm a little more aware of it because of the app that I feel like it's less safe than before.
Huh. So you still live at home,
Yes.
and that's pretty normal for Queens, I'd say. And for anyone who actually has like a big enough house or apartment, which is where like families who stay in neighborhoods kind of have that ability.
I think that is less. So, like, I read an article about Queens. Queens is actually, unfortunately, it is one of those places where a lot of people have illegal housing where it's like they cram everyone into a small space and they really try to, like, make it work. So, my family, for instance, and I mean, this is not something I'm proud to say, but like, we're a family of 6 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and it's only because every other place is so unaffordable. Only now have we decided that we're going to plan on moving, but like towards Long Island, which obviously comes at the cost of not having public transportation as convenient as it is now.
Accessibility.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I have a rent control apartment, and when I think about expanding my family, not to be too crass. Sorry, that was a joke.
Oh, no.
But when I think about expanding my family and, being together with the person I'm with, and I think about what is actually affordable, considering like I do art news or whatever I do, I think, okay, how would I make it work in my 1.5 bedrooms in Greenwich Village, because what else am I going to be able to afford? And I think that's a very real thing that a lot of New Yorkers have to calculate when they have children. If you want to live here, if you want it to be accessible, if you want your kids to have the kind of opportunities that are available in the city, and if you, or as parents, like the kind of opportunities that are available to adults in the city as far as work goes and things like that, and making the calculations about space and making the calculations about mobility and family is just something that most New Yorkers have to face, especially as the rents get higher and higher and higher.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's just like something I worry about myself. I mean, my significant other is from Jersey, and part of me as a New Yorker, I'm like, I don't want to move to New Jersey. But then on the other hand, like, I understand it's a little more affordable than it is in New York, and it's not terribly far from New York where I can still visit. But ideally, I've been a Queens girl my entire life, and I want to live in Queens my entire life. I've never had any desire to move to the city because for me, I still want a little bit of that space away from the hecticness.
Right. Well, have you ever thought about like further out in Queens, like near the Horace Harding or anything like that? I know it's pricey out there, but like,
I mean, that's where we're moving, like around there, like towards like Long Island, I guess.
Those are, do you know that Oasis Bagels apparently is, I think, one of the best bagels in the entire city, and they are out there in, I forget the name of the neighborhood, but they're like right on Horace Harding. Oasis Bagels, they don't toast their bagels because they're always fresh.
So it's kind of like near Queens College, around there?
I would take the train to the last stop on the E train and then take a bus.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay, so it's like in Jamaica around there.
Yeah, something. It's not in Jamaica. I think like maybe
Fresh Meadows.
Fresh Meadows area.
Yeah, so that's where I'm moving around, like Belrose, so.
Okay, that's nice.
It is a nice neighborhood, and honestly, we're lucky at the price that we got it at because at that point, like, their parents passed away and they just wanted to sell it quick.
Right.
So we're going to move to Belrose. But for me, like, I've always had the train at my convenience. So having to rely on a bus all the time to get me to the train station is going to be a bit of a culture shock to me.
I know. The weird thing is what people don't realize is that for New Yorkers, there are subway people and there are bus people.
Exactly.
And if you grew up on like a subway route, now, there are people who grew up on the bus subway route and did that dance every day. But for me, I grew up subway routes. For some friends of mine who grew up out in Fresh Meadows and things like that, they're very comfortable taking the bus. And actually, bus service seems like it's getting a lot better, at least in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's still a bunch of fights going on to make it better in the Bronx and certain parts of Queens. But to move to a place where then you're either a bus person on the subway or a subway person on the bus, it's going to be a weird culture shock for sure.
But I mean, like, I did in the long run, I didn't want to live in Astoria forever. Like, I was thinking something a little more, and this is where it's like, in my dreams, I guess, because like Bayside or Whitestone, where it's a little more like I guess it's
Ooh.
closer to like the Cross Bronx,
Right.
but like for me, I just like the view. The houses are pretty, but this is all like dreaming.
Right.
If everything like comes out the way it does, then wonderful. I hope it works that way.
Well, what are your dreams?
So I mean, I do this Instagram thing. Is it grammable? I think it's fun, but something I really love to do is writing. I feel like
Really?
I'm working on a novel. I know every writer says they're working on a novel, but like my whole novel that I'm working on is kind of helping people. It's a work of fiction, but like loosely based around my life. Is like helping people navigate their identity being first generation, because I feel like it's a struggle being first generation, having your parents from a completely different background and then having to clash with them on what you think is right and how they want their ideals.
Oh, so, well, take me through the novel a little bit. Can you
Oh yeah,
tell me a little bit about it?
I'm Pakistani American, and I think any South Asian can actually relate to it. Is like your parents want to uphold this culture, and I totally get it, because like you're in a new country, you want to like you feel like you're going to lose everything about yourself because you're just trying to make ends meet. But on the other hand, pushing a culture onto your kids is unfair to them, because they also want to fit in. Having to go to school and really trying to fit into this culture is hard enough when there are certain things you don't partake in. Like a lot of Indians are vegetarian, for example. You're not going to say, I love bacon or something like that. And for me, like, I'm Muslim, so like, I don't eat pork, I don't drink. So, like, for me, like, the party lifestyle was out of it. I never really found the appeal. Personally, to me, like, I don't even like the idea of people touching me. So that's why I was like, parties are okay. Concerts are yes, though. I love music, so like, I'll go to concerts.
And like your love of art, and I don't know. I was so interested in talking to you because of your like lust for like really exploring the city's art and artists, and that you really kind of cared. So your protagonist is a young first generation.
Yep.
South
South Asian
South
American.
Asian.
Yep.
Okay.
Because like,
What happens to her?
I mean, she just really explores who she is, because that's the great thing about like being here is you get to form your own identity. You don't have to be one or the other. And for some reason, like, I think when you're first generation, your parents try to force you into this identity. And like I said, I understand from their point of view, they think you're going to lose your culture, but you're really going to find your own culture. You take the good of your parents' culture, and you take the good of American culture, and you form who you are.
And like you're saying, like it's not like part of your new identity is that you all of a sudden get drunk and eat bacon.
Exactly.
It's like you kept what was important, but you also want to expand. What are some of the ways in which you think there's some tension between your parents and first gen people like your parents?
Just even like dating outside your culture, for them it's like you're abandoning your culture if you date outside your culture. But I feel like the older you get, the more secure you are that you're not going to have to change for anyone. If someone likes you, they'll like you for who you are, and they won't try to change your beliefs. Maybe I understand if I was like 20 something, like 21, then like you want to impress people. I think when you get older, you get to that point where you're like, I don't care anymore. If you like me, great. If not, then I'm not wasting my time either.
So, as you look at the future, if you were to date someone or marry someone outside of your culture, how would that work? How would that work for you? What do you think? I always say, and it's been my experience, I always say, like, no matter how mad anyone's grandparents are, once the baby comes, everyone's fine. So my grandparents on my mom's side are white, Anglo-Saxon. Like they were the kind of conservative that I don't even think exists anymore. Like we're talking about, Goldwater Republicans. They're like, oh no, what if China gets the A-bomb? And my mom first married an Italian Catholic, which even to them was pearl clutching. And then she married a drug dealing, swarthy Russian Jewish guy, which was my dad. And my uncle, his wife was Chinese. So they had to contend with all of a sudden this expanding family of cultures and religions and different races that they didn't really expect to have to deal with. And I'm not going to say they did it totally gracefully, but they did it, and I love them very much. And it somehow worked, you know?
I mean, you know what's interesting is my great grandmother isn't even like Pakistani. I mean, during that time it was India, but she was not of our background. She was Persian, so like still the same faith, but like a different culture nonetheless. And during then, I guess this is the thing that it is unfortunate is for some reason culturally it is more acceptable for a man to marry outside the race than it is a woman. And I think it's this whole like thing about like possession of women, like possession of women, where it's like she's our woman, so our women should stick to our kind rather than, oh, you know, like the only thing the religion dictates is same faith and that's it.
And you're like, I'm not going to drink, I'm going to keep the faith, but I'm going to be an independent. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Just like that.
That's cool.
And I mean, I really hope my parents come around that to whoever I marry, but it is going to be difficult for them if I marry outside the race. And I know it's a battle that I'm going to have to fight, but in a lot of ways that's the oldest kid's struggle is like you really are paving the path for your siblings.
So you're the oldest.
I'm the oldest of 4, so I have 1 sister and 2 brothers.
So you are doing the good work. You're doing the good work for the siblings just in
More
case.
for my sister than my brothers.
Okay.
Because my brothers, like, they're guys. It's not going to matter as much for them.
Do you have a name for your novel yet?
No, not yet. I mean, I'm still working on it. Like, I kind of want to, like, go into, like, I wrote the outline, but I haven't written the details. So for me, it's like, you know, I take pride in being American. Like, even though I'm Pakistani, I consider myself more American than I do Pakistani. And that's probably because growing up my entire life, I wasn't raised around South Asians. So for me, it still feels like a kind of like completely different scene that I'm not a part of. I have my own group of friends who are South Asian, but I feel like we're kind of the outlier of the people who do exist, you know?
That's cool. So you have this like group of first gen friends.
Yeah.
Then you're all just figuring it out together.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there is like a lot of the South Asian culture, but like, see, the thing is, when I have kids, I'm going to raise them with a few things. Culture, but like with the culture, it's the food, the clothes, the language. I think language is essential to learning any culture. If you lose the language, what's left of the
God,
culture?
I wish I just knew a second language. Like I'm trying to learn French right now just because Duolingo and I like going to France a lot. I mean, I would honestly love to learn anything. And I think having multiple languages in a household is just such an incredible thing that I do regret that I missed out on as a kid.
I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm the only one who knows how to speak it out of my siblings.
Oh, wow.
So, like, growing up, my mom and dad, like, I guess because they were learning the languages themselves, they were like, hey, we don't care if you speak back in English to us. So, like, funny thing is, my parents don't speak Urdu. Urdu and Hindi are pretty much the same. They don't speak it, but that's what I speak.
Oh.
But, like, they know how to speak it. That's, like, the national language. But my parents speak Punjabi to us. I don't know how to speak Punjabi, but I understand it fluently.
Wait, all right, hold on. I have this out for me again. Your parents speak Urdu.
Yeah, but they also speak Punjabi.
But they also speak Punjabi. They generally speak Punjabi in the home, but you speak Urdu and you don't speak Punjabi.
Yeah.
Okay, but your siblings, do they speak Punjabi?
They don't actually speak either. Like, they speak it, but, like, barely passing. Like, you can
Wow.
tell they're struggling to speak. And I think the only reason I learned the language so well was because I watched these TV shows with my mom. I listened to music. So, like, I picked up on the language that way.
And you want to raise your family when and if you decide to expand your family, like you want to raise your kids with Urdu.
Yeah. I actually wanted to learn Punjabi, but I guess the only way I could kind of resonate it with is, like, how Latinos, like, there's, like, standard Spanish and then, like, different dialects from different countries. So that's how it is with Punjabi. So unfortunately, there is this, like, train of thought where Urdu, Hindi, you learn that's respectful, but, like, Punjabi's kind of like street talk. So, like, it comes off as less educated, but I'm like, that is our culture. So like Pakistan and India, they have multiple languages in the country. I think India has like 96 languages
Really?
because of different areas. So like I have like a few Indian friends. Some of them don't know how to speak Hindi, but they know how to speak Gujarati or Punjabi. I have a Punjabi friend. She doesn't understand Hindi. I thought they were the same because I grew up with both.
So so you grew up with both, so it didn't like register in your mind that they
Yeah.
were so
Yep.
different. That's interesting. Well, what else do I need to know about you and your hopes and dreams?
I mean, really just like the novel and like getting spaces out so that people could explore. Like growing up, I was so sheltered, beyond sheltered. Like even in college, like the first 2 years of college, my dad would like pick me up from school, drop me off. I went to Queens College at first. Then I transferred to
Wait,
Hunter.
you went to Queens College, so he drove you like what, 2 miles?
Yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
a quicker drive than taking public transportation.
Right.
But at that point, I was like, I want to take the train. I want to explore things myself.
And so what about when you went to Hunter?
When I went to Hunter, he did not drive me there.
Yeah, going
I
into
mean,
Manhattan to 68th Street is
exactly,
like a nightmare from
exactly.
Queens. Why would anyone do that?
And plus, it was only half an hour of a commute for me by train. So
Right.
compared to like 45 minutes on the, I just prefer going on the subway.
So right now I know that in the mornings you work for a construction company.
Yep.
And then your afternoons you spend soaking up like,
All the New York City culture. So like, even though a lot of the events happen in New York, I mean Manhattan, I want to expand to other boroughs. I think, there's a lot to see in other boroughs, but it's also a double-edged sword because it's like Lonely Planet released like, oh, Queens is the best place to be. And it's like, do we really want everyone in Queens?
that's really the question. Do I went to Jackson Heights because I was hungry, and sometimes you just need to go where the good food is.
Oh, yeah.
So I went to Jackson Heights to also get a bunch of Christmas presents, Christmas and Hanukkah presents, because I like getting the large packs of incense,
Right.
rose incense and pine incense and things like that.
Oh, wow. So you're literally in like Little India.
Yeah, but basically, because if you go to like a woo-woo Manhattan store, the same incense that smells not even as good is going to
Right.
be $1 million. You go to Jackson
You
Heights.
get authentic products.
Yeah, and it's like, it smells really good if you don't have to break the bank.